Sorry.
It's fine.
Okay.
Hello, can you please state your name so we can put it in a...
Okay. My name is Michael Louis Marchant. My birth name is Michael Patrick Neely, and that's what I served under most of my Air Force career.
Where were you born?
I was born in Bradford, Pennsylvania, a long time ago. I'm over 70 now. But Bradford was famous in Vietnam and everywhere else because that's where they made Zippo lighters. And on the bottom of every Zippo lighter, it says Bradford.
Do you have any siblings, and if so, did they serve as well?
I have had two brothers. One has passed away, and no, they did not serve.
Can you tell us about when you went into the service? Were you drafted, or did you just decide to join?
Okay, well, I grew up in the military. My stepfather was a career Navy man, and so I lived all over the world growing up. We never lived anywhere more than 2.5 years. So I've been to Europe, Africa, lived in Morocco for 5 years, and started high school there and finished high school in Hawaii. Graduated in 1967. The Vietnam War was just about to hit its peak, and if you didn't go to college or you weren't married, you were going to get drafted. So I went to Pearl Harbor Welding School, so I wouldn't have to go in right away. And I ended up leaving and got my draft notice. And luckily for me, I was a pretty good boxer. And I pretty much beat everybody in Hawaii. So I was very attractive to the Air Force boxing team, which kind of recruited me into the Air Force.
What type of training or schooling did you need for this branch?
Well, this is kind of a different story than you'll get from a lot of people, but the Air Force and the Coast Guard were the two toughest services to get into. At 1967, there was a 2-year waiting list for the Air Force. Everybody was going into the Army or Marines or Navy. And so, I was very fortunate to get into the Air Force, and basically my only skills at that time was I was a great boxer, and 1968 was Olympic year. As soon as I got out of basic training in February of '68, I automatically started fighting because we were all trying to get on the Olympic team. I ended up winning the all-service boxing title. I beat the Army, Navy, and Marines. And I ended up losing in the Olympic trials to the guy who won the bronze medal in Mexico City. The interesting thing about some of my boxing was George Foreman, who was the heavyweight champion later, won the gold medal in Mexico City in '68, and he and I were roommates at the Olympic trials. So it was kind of like Tim Vanny and Baumgartner. Were very similar. I did score very high on the ASVAB. So when I was in basic, I didn't tell anybody I was going to the boxing team because I didn't want them to single me out and, you know, make my life any more difficult than basic training already was. But I scored very high, and I actually got a set of orders to Chanute, Illinois to be a weather observer on a B-52 bomber. So you had to have really high scores to get into that kind of technical. But I ended up not going there, obviously.
What was your first assignment after basic training?
Hamilton Air Force Base. My actual job title or career field was administrative assistant. So I basically didn't do anything but box for all of '68. And then in '69, I had to start learning something so I could get promoted. So I was an administrative assistant.
Did you qualify with any equipment, and if you did, like vehicles, aircraft? What kind of training did it take to get to the equipment?
Okay, I had an interesting career, like I told you. When I ended my boxing career, I won another inter-service championship in '69. When I finished fighting, I received my orders to Vietnam. I was assigned to the 15th Aerial Port Squadron. I did mostly administrative work, but I also learned how to drive a forklift and load an airplane. You know, obviously I qualified with the M16 and 45 and other small arms weaponry.
What was the hardest part about the service lifestyle that you had to adapt to?
Well, for me it was easy because I was a service kid, so I knew what was going on, and my stepdad actually was a drill instructor in basic training, so I knew everything that was going on. I grew up with service kids, so all of us knew the service backwards and forwards. So it wasn't a quantum leap from civilian to service. I was pretty much already knowledgeable about everything. It was crazy.
Where did you serve?
I served at Hamilton Air Force Base, which is located in Marin County above San Francisco. It's no longer there. The base was closed. But during the 60s and 70s, it was Air Defense Command. And so we had F-4s, and we were the coastal protector of California, actually. The base also had nuclear weapons, which, you know, nobody knew about, and we were told not to tell anybody, but we did have nukes there, so that was interesting. From there, I went to Da Nang, Vietnam, which is the northernmost large Air Force base in Vietnam. There were 4 big bases in Vietnam, and I was a member of the 15th Aerial Port, and we were responsible for supplying the northern half of South Vietnam. So we, we shipped out all the weapons and personnel all over the northern part of Vietnam. Khe Sanh. We were, my unit was responsible for aiding the South Vietnamese in their invasion of Laos, which turned into comedy of errors. It was pretty bad. Shortly thereafter, they started withdrawing troops, and so I was actually there for the last really big fighting that we had. We were rocketed a lot. Most of the guys I was with were exposed to Agent Orange. I suffered some problems from that. I have post-traumatic stress disorder, and it took me a long time to be classified and everything. The military was very difficult to deal with when it came to us Vietnam veterans.
How did you stay in touch with family and friends?
Well, we had pretty good mail service, I will say that. Obviously, we didn't have cell phones. If we got to a phone, it was usually at a USO in Saigon. We didn't have direct phone capabilities except by a system called Mars, which when you talk to somebody, you talk and then you say over, and then they talk. It's like talking in a walkie-talkie. So I didn't talk to my family, but maybe 3 times the whole year I was there.
Is there something that you did in the service that you would consider that you did for good luck?
For good luck? Yeah, I kept my head down. I prayed a lot. There's no atheists in foxholes. Actually, I did really well in my career there. I was Airman of the Month. I was awarded the Air Force Commendation Medal for meritorious service, and my unit got the Presidential Unit Citation and the Air Force Commendation. You know, I had a good career. If I hadn't grown up in the military, I might have stayed in for a while, but I wanted out. Vietnam was not pretty.
Do you recall the day the service ended, and where were you when the service did end?
I was in Merced, California, at Castle Air Force Base, and I got a 90-day early out to go to college. I was accepted at the University of Nevada, Reno, and I remember going down and signing my orders, and one of my buddies at personnel drove me to the front gate, and I caught a bus, and I was gone.
How were you received by your family along with the community?
Well, you know, my family was a military family, and my stepdad had just retired. You know, they obviously were happy to see me home. I was not received with any kind of gratitude anywhere. Even at the USO and veterans organizations like the American Legion and that, we were looked down upon. And, you know, I'll challenge any of the old-timers that say, oh, no, yeah, it was. You guys are losers. You lost. And, you know, I had quite a few friends that died in Vietnam, and I've been to the wall in Washington about 4 times, and I've actually found the names. And it's an interesting thing when you do go to the monuments in Washington, D.C. The Vietnam Memorial is very solemn. There's not a lot of gaiety or people talking, and it's just, you look in awe. I don't know if you're familiar with the wall, but it starts out real low and then it builds. The biggest part of the war goes from like 65 to 71, and then it starts tapering again. It's something everybody should see. 50,000 men, 58,000. It's a lot.
How did you readjust to the civilian life?
For me, it was pretty easy. I'd been in the military, but I'd also, been intermixed with kids stateside when we were in the mainland in Hawaii. So it wasn't a big adjustment. I had goals that I wanted to go to college, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I figured I'd find out.
Did the service change you?
Vietnam did, yeah. It was, there was a lot of corruption going on. A lot of the companies and banks were making huge fortunes off the war. And, it didn't take a brain surgeon to realize that after a while. It was, there's a lot of wasted lives. We lost almost 60,000 guys, and most of them were your age, 18, 19. The majority of the guys that died were young.
Did you join any veteran organizations? If so, did you attend the reunions?
I actually, most of my classmates in Hawaii, we served. Even the kids that weren't military kids. And I've kept close contact with my Hawaiian brothers. In fact, I just got back from Hawaii, and they had a big reunion in Vegas. I didn't make that, but we're very close knit. One of, and this you might be interested in, one of my classmates won the Medal of Honor. When he was 18 years old, he went straight from high school to the Army. He wasn't even in the bush, as we called it. He was at a little base camp, and they pulled a suicide attack on him one night, and he threw himself on a grenade to save about 10 guys, and he died instantly. But he is remembered forever at the back gate of Wheeler Air Force Base. His name was Terry Kawamura. And the interesting thing was I didn't even get along with him in high school. He was kind of a little thug. But, to sacrifice your life to save 10 lives is, I don't know if I'm that brave.
What are some life lessons that you learned from military service?
Well, I think one of the things that bothers me right now is that the United States has always been a leader in the world, and we're not now. We're just not the United States, and it's embarrassing for me to talk to some of my friends from other countries like England and France and some of the other places I've been. It's like it just doesn't seem like anybody cares, and I think with a lot of guys like myself, I was at Porterville College for 25 years. I was a career counselor and activities director and other numerous jobs, but it's like young people, everybody beats up on them. I don't beat up on them, but I think that they just kind of cruise and think everything's going to remain, hunky-dory. You're going to have new iPhones, new cars. Well, somebody has to pay for that. And, while we have freedom, you can choose what you want to do. We have to be really careful not to turn into kind of a I can't get the word out, totalitarianism or whatever, where the government tells you what to do. I think young people need to be involved. I think you should have a voice in what you want to see in our country. And, I think basically people are good. There's evil throughout the world, and, that's always going to be. But I think if you are an activist, and you don't have to go out and lead rallies or anything, but you need to be involved. You need to vote. You need to be up on issues like environment. Look at our environment. You guys you're not going to be able to breathe in the next 20 years if things don't change. So, my thing to all young people is go out, find something that you can contribute to. Don't just sit back and let things happen to you.
How has the service impacted your feelings about war or the service in general?
Well, war is hell. One of the reasons I got post-traumatic stress was we shipped out bodies every day. And just seeing casket after casket after casket, it just, I wake up, to this day, I have violent nightmares on a nightly basis. I take meds for it. I try and, we're getting a bigger bed, my wife and I, a king-size bed so I don't slug her accidentally. But, I'm not unusual when it comes to that. When I see certain images of war, it's like, whoa, And some guys have it really, really bad. We have about 20 veterans die every day by suicide. It's that never happened with the other wars. Now, not to say there wasn't post-traumatic stress. It was called shell shock then, but it's pretty bad. So yeah, it does affect you.
Is there something you've always wanted to share about the service or an experience that you never got the chance to?
Yeah, the service was a good place to be, and I think now it's a good place because I don't know if you're familiar with Israel. Okay, everybody in Israel has to serve 2 years of duty. It can be in the military, it can be in public, works or whatever, but that gives them a feel for their country. They're actually doing something. We don't have that. We don't even have a draft anymore. And I think if I was one of the people in charge, I'd make mandatory community service a part of your education. You either go in the military, you do something for your country. Anyways, that's my thought on it.
What's something you would like people to remember from your story?
We lost a lot of bright kids. We really did. It was really unfair, and it's kind of still the same way. if you're rich and you have money, you can buy your way out of having to serve. And of course, we don't have a draft anymore, but I really think that young people should get involved, do something. Okay?
As a thank you for your service, we had some friends from Doyle Elementary.
Yes?
They made you a little gift.
Oh, how
as a thank you
nice.
for your service.
Thank you. You know, that's wonderful. Tell them I appreciate it very much. And you know, little kids, believe it or not, little kids get the military. You know, they really do, and they're. You know, I can remember when I was little, you know, saluting the flag and going to parades and stuff. And you know, you live in a community that does appreciate the military, and you know, the military appreciates them. And you know, I would say to you guys, if you don't know what you're going to do, think about it as, you know, check it out. Just go, hey, I want to talk to you, and I think they'd be glad to answer some questions you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you.